I call to order the regular meeting of the Anchorage Assembly for July 19th. We will begin with Harriet Drummond leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, roll call. Roll call.
Ms. Drummond.
I am here.
Mr. Trainee.
Here.
Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Ms. Johnston. Here. Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Trombley.
Here.
Ms. Osiander. Here. Mr. Flynn. Mr. Flynn is joining us by phone. And Mr. Birch.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Drummond, the pledge. We have before us approval of the minutes for previous meetings, regular meeting of April 24th, 2012.
Move to accept.
Okay, any objection? Seeing, hearing none, those minutes are accepted. And regular meeting, May 8th, 2012.
Move to accept.
Any objection? Seeing and hearing none, those minutes are approved as well. We'll move into our reports with the Mayor's report. Mr. Vacalis?
There will be no report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Assembly Chair's report is basically, I'm going to try to do this as quickly as I can this evening so you can all get out and enjoy the beautiful sunshine and the warm temperatures per a request of Ms. Gray Jackson. We'll begin with Mr. Birch.
Yeah, I'd just say that we met briefly earlier today on the issue of Assembly reapportionment, and we hope to have a draft copy of a memo on declaring the Assembly malapportioned to the body on the July 10th meeting. We will have final, or at least a first cut at the population by Assembly district available at that time. I think it's distributed to everyone earlier this week. Secondly, we don't need to go on at length, but we did have a productive meeting with the school board earlier this week. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. Ms. Osiander.
First,
Ms. Osiander, if I could. Ms. Gray Jackson.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question to Mr. Birch's report. Thank you very much for your report, Mr. Birch. But who's we? Who met on the? Yeah.
This morning, as Chairman Hall, Assemblyman Trainee, and myself met with Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Ms. Osiander.
At last night's Planning and Zoning work session, I discovered that due to really no fault of their own, because they have had some casework to deal with, the Commission will not be getting us their final approval on all the Title 21 chapters until July. With some frustration, I told them that the Assembly has not had access to this document for quite a while, and I was going to start our committee meetings up again. So with that, the Title 21 committee will be beginning again starting July 19th, and we'll start with the chapters that Planning and Zoning already has approved, which are 1, 2, and 12. So you've already got the provisionally adopted. You've already also received the staff proposed amendments. I'm going to get you all the Planning and Zoning approval format for those 3 chapters, and it's my hope that you can submit amendments to our committee so we can go through them in committee rather than and give a recommendation on them from committee. That's the first item. The second item is I have had some long-standing interest in trying to improve public transportation, as many of us had on this body, and I have successfully in the past worked with the administration when we lost our buses to make the Connect service happen and to work with the Valley Mover for a stop in Eagle River. And I just wanted to let the body that I'm now trying to work on taxi cabs to try to get greater availability for cab service. Actually, I'm trying to get information about cab service on the military bases and in Chugiak Eagle River. Specifically, I'm trying to look at the feasibility of a limited use permit for a service that could just be from those areas. So I'm trying to gather data to support that, and I basically want to ask the administration to please give me any assistance you can on this and work with me as we go through it, because I am working on a potential code change that I would bring back after I gather data. So I want to thank you and hope that that will work, Mr. Michaelis.
Yes, ma'am, and as we've discussed, we will cooperate, we will work with you and see what we can come up with. Thank you.
Very good. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Trini.
Debbie, can we get the P&Z stuff in electronic format?
Yes,
For
sir.
those of us that live on a computer.
Yes, sir.
And what part of July do they think they're going to be able to get this document to us now?
Well,
Or do we bring up an expiration of the board and create another one?
my belief right now is by the first or second week in July we'll get it.
Okay.
My plan is to start with chapters 1, 2, and 12 in committee on July 19th, Thursday morning. I'm going to go back to it used to be every Thursday morning. I'm going to do that again as we work through this. And then once they finish with everything, they want to sit down and talk to the full body to explain what they've been doing and why they've been doing. Now, all that will become revealed within the next month or so as to schedule.
So, Debbie, when this is done, what are you going to do with your time?
I'm going to be so happy, Mr. Trini.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Trombley.
Ethics and Elections Committee met on Friday, and majority assembly members were there. For the public who weren't able to attend, we heard a report from the group that filed the recount petition. They had a tremendous amount of information, a thick packet of stuff to read, and a lot of suggestions to make the Title 28. Title 28, for those of you who don't know, is the city's election laws. What I plan on doing is, when we get the report back from Judge Judge Hensley, we'll start our rewrite of Title 28, incorporating all the suggestions and recommendations that were made from both parties. So I just wanted to publicly thank that group again for coming in and taking the time. It was very, very detailed information that they provided. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, a little bit of leeway. I'd like to recognize my brother Aaron, who's here. He's a Black Hawk pilot, served 2 tours in Iraq, and he's just back up here visiting family. So just wanted to publicly acknowledge him and thank him for his service.
Mr. Starr.
I have no report.
Ms. Johnston.
Yes, the Enterprise Committee will be meeting on June 26th with the ML&P Board to discuss the ML&P's budget for 2013. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Mr. Flynn, any report? Is that a no?
For the moment, anyway.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit Committee met on June 6th with the auditors, and there were 2 agenda items. The first agenda item was the report to the Audit Committee, the management letter, and the presentation of the 2011 audited financial statements. And I was really happy. I'm happy to say that we had a clean audit with some minor issues, network access, terminated employees not being moved from the system in a timely manner, some password issues. The auditors feel the MOA should increase the length of passwords and limit the number of login attempts for the administrator account. There's quite a few new GASB statement requirements, 6 of them. There were 3 significant and or unusual transactions for the port regarding the cost of issuance, capitalization, and amortization of capital debt, which was same issues as last year. And in the state and federal single audits, there were 3 federal findings. and one state finding to do with child care grant program and highway planning grant and state designated legislative grant. And if anybody has any questions, our auditor, Michelle Drew, is in the audience, and you can ask her some questions. The one thing that concerned me, and I've talked to Ms. Mahoney about it, was the fact that this year, and it's the first time that I can remember in about 20-something years, we did not have the detailed statements, and that's the document that I really use on a regular basis because it has details on the city's finances and it's easy to navigate through. But Ms. Mahoney informed me that because of Cronus and SAP implementation, they've really made a decision not to have this document available for us, and if we want it, it's going to take 40 to 60 likely overtime hours. So I'm disappointed we don't have it, but I've accepted the fact that we're not going to unless we want to spend some extra money. And the second agenda item was a request that I had to change the audit plan to add an audit or a special report on APD dispatch. Frankly, the last time that there was any kind of review on the AP dispatch office was in 1997. And, the issue was just to review staffing and 911 response calls. This is public safety for our community, folks. But the audit committee, they were pretty adamant about not having Pete Raskins do that audit. They just didn't think it was necessary, and I was a little bit persistent, so we compromised, and Mr. Vikalis agreed to provide some statistics, not just to me, but to the entire assembly, and he told me this evening that that'll be coming to us very shortly. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm done, and one other thing, I'd like to thank Ms. Mahoney for providing this evening the answers to the Kronos questions that I had a few weeks ago. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Osiander.
Ms. Gray-Jackson, I unfortunately lost these until this morning, but I was reading the CAFR reports. Was there any significant findings that needed to be highlighted?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Osiander. As I stated in my report, there were 3 what's called significant or unusual transactions to do with the port regarding cost of issuance of capitalization and amortization of capital debt. Ms. Drew is in the audience, and she can expand on that if you like. Where are you, Ms. Drew? There she is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, do you want that then? Do you want to pull the item and deal with it during information reports rather than now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Flynn, welcome back.
2 things to report. One, when you go to pick up the phone, press the mute button, not the speaker button. And secondly, the AMATS Policy Committee will be meeting next Thursday afternoon when we will take up the TIP amendments that the Assembly dealt with at our last meeting. That's all to report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. We'll try to keep from cutting you off again. Mr. Horniman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Public Safety Committee met on June 6th. It was all fluoride all day. We had just about 2 hours. Mr. Trainee, Mr. Drummond, myself were present, and we had quite a turnout from both the community and what I designate as subject matter experts. Ms. Single, thank you very much to the administration through providing information through, and the AWU folks that stepped forward as well. And so, in essence, we had a very good, productive meeting with a few to-dos, both from the administration, some things to look up, also both from the community as well as the subject matter folks. I actually got a letter today in the mail today from the Alaska Dental Association, as well as from the state of Alaska's dental expert in chief. And so we have, I guess, if you will, looking for our next step in progress, which is to, I believe, gather more of the details we were looking for and then meet perhaps in a task force type situation, including the Public Safety Commission and some other subject matter experts and members of the community. And Ms. Single looks like she's got something that she'd like to report.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Hohnman. I just wanted to say that the Health and Human Services Commission, what I think would also be an opportunity to take advantage of an existing group to look at this, and it's pretty balanced, but we are working to get your additional information. It hasn't fallen off our radar screen, but we are getting the information that you're interested in. And
Definitely.
I did have inquiry from a dentist who is on our Health and Human Services Commission. So I think we're there.
Very good.
There.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will say that we're scheduled for the next Public Safety Commission meeting on, our committee meeting on the second Wednesday, July 11th. However, I may have to work with you on that. If I have to take my grandson down stateside, lower 48, we'll let you know.
Thank you, Mr. Holloman. Mr. Trainee.
In the interest of sunshine, nothing, sir.
All right. Appreciate that. Ms. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After the work sessions last Friday, I had the pleasure of joining I think we called it a staff work session on the elections issue that was run by our very able Assembly Counsel, Julia Tucker, who was in her element helping a whole group of people, including 3 Assembly members, begin to sort out the issues and try not to solve the problem, but to sort everything out. And I had to drag myself out of there at 5 p.m., and they continued apparently for quite some time after that. And I know that we're making great progress on sorting out the elections issues and what will be done with Title 28 and policy and the clerk's office and just a whole host of issues that are beginning to be sorted out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drummond. Mr. Trainee.
Just let me reiterate, at no time were there more than 3 Assembly members gathered in that ad hoc meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Trainee.
Not a problem.
This completes our committee reports, and we're ready to deal with the addendum to the agenda and one laid on the table item.
Move to incorporate both.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to incorporate. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Mr. Flynn.
No objection, sir.
No objection. Thank you. Okay, I need to read the addendum into the record. Begin with item 9A4, resolution number 169, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring the Child Care Assistance Program and its employees for their service to the community. We have under C, 9C, 1, Assembly Memorandum Number 384, recommendation of award to Roger Hickle Contracting, Incorporated, for Fire Station Number 5 replacement for the Municipality of Anchorage Public Works Department, Maintenance and Operations Division, ITB 2012CO28, in the amount of $4,897,000 from the Purchasing Department. We have 9C2, Assembly Memorandum 385, recommendation of award to Roger Hickle Contracting for the 32nd Avenue upgrade Muldoon Road to Brook Ridge Drive for the Municipality of Anchorage Public Works Department, Project Management and Engineering Division, ITB 2012C037, in the amount of $4,109,606.50 from the Purchasing Department. 9C3, Assembly Memorandum 386, recommendation of award to Renegade Equipment, LLC, for the 9th Avenue reconstruction, Phase 2, Cordova Street to Latouche Street for the Municipality of Anchorage Public Works Department, Project Management and Engineering Division, ITB 2012C031, in the amount of $3,481,736.30 from the Purchasing Department. 9C4, Assembly Memorandum Number 387, recommendation of award to Seacoast Construction Company, Incorporated, for miscellaneous construction services 2012 through 2013 for the Municipality of Anchorage Public Works Department, Project Management and Engineering Division, ITB 2012C029, in the amount of $1,500,000. Item 9C5, Assembly Memorandum 388, recommendation of award to Granite Construction Company to furnish asphalt concrete hot mix to the Municipality of Anchorage Public Works Department, Maintenance and Operation Division, ITB 2012B030, in the amount of $703,000 $30,000 from the Purchasing Department. 9D, under New Business, Item 8A, Assembly Memorandum 374, Sole Source Contract, that's 374A, Sole Source Contract with Alyeska Resort Development, LLC, Alyeska, to construct an Allberg Avenue extension in Girdwood for the Municipality of Anchorage Community Development Department, CDD, in the amount of $2,750,000. Purchasing Department. 9D15, Assembly Memorandum AM 389, recommendation of award to MV Transportation Incorporated for operation of the Anchorage Coordinated Paratransit System for the Municipality of Anchorage, Public Transportation Department, RFP number 2011-PO40, in the amount of $468,727. Purchasing Department. D16, Assembly Memorandum 390, cooperative purchase of Caterpillar Model 140M motor graders from NC Machinery for the Municipality of Anchorage, Department of Public Works, Maintenance and Operations Division, M&O 943, in the amount of $943,284. Purchasing Department. 9D17, Assembly Memorandum 391, sole purchase of MB H20 loader-mounted snowblowers from Yukon Equipment Incorporated for the Municipality of Anchorage, Department of Public Works, Maintenance and Operations Division, M&O, in the amount of $908,800. Purchasing Department. 9E, Information and Reports. Number 4, Information Memorandum Number 48, 2011 Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards, State Financial Assistance Report, and Required Federal Information, Finance Department, Controller Division. And 9DF, Ordinance and Resolutions for Introduction. 6, Resolution Number 116, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage providing for a revision of the Anchorage School District financial plan for FY 2012 through 2013 Anchorage School District. Public hearing is scheduled for 7/10/12. And laid on the table is F7, Ordinance and Resolutions for Introduction, Ordinance Number 60, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to reauthorize certain boards and commissions by amending the sunset provisions in the Anchorage Municipal Code, sections 4.40.020, 4.40.030, 4.60.040, 4.60.060, 4.60.100, 4.60.110, 4.60.1160, 4.60.200, 4.60.240, 4.60.275, and 4.60.290. Introduced by Chair of the Assembly, request to the Assembly. Public hearing date 10/9/12. That is the incorporated agenda. I would accept a motion to approve.
Move and approve.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Anyone opposed to approval of the agenda?
Mr. Chair.
Pardon? Oh, yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just have a question before we approve the incorporation.
Yes.
The laid on the table item, I'm
Yes.
just curious why that's laid on the table if the public hearing is not scheduled until October. What's the big rush?
Municipal code calls for us to do this 120 days in advance, so there's time for an audit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Items to be pulled. Mr. Birch.
9 Alpha 3 and 9 Bravo 7.
Mr. Flynn.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Ms. Osiander.
9 Alpha 2, 9 Bravo 4, 9 E 1, 9 E 2.
Mr. Trombley.
9 Echo 3, and then Mr. Honeman, you were going to pull. Okay, that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trombley. Mr. Starr.
From the addendum, 9 Delta 13 and 9 Foxtrot 6. 13 is a conflict in the introduction item. I just would like to have a little further discussion about it on 9 Foxtrot 6.
Okay. What?
I'm sorry, yeah, 13 off the regular and F6 off the addendum.
Ms. Johnston.
9 Bravo A to move the A version. Bravo 8A. Bravo 8 to move the A version. I'm trying to be brief so we can get out of here for the sunshine. Sorry.
Okay, Ms. Johnston. Ms. Gray Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Horniman.
9 Alpha 4, 9A4 on the addendum. And on the regular agenda, 9B as in boy 5 and 9D as in Delta 6.
Point of order.
Yes.
Shouldn't we also then pull Delta 8 since we pulled the A?
Yes, it's 9B.
Thank you.
D. She's got another version. She's got the A version. She wants to move that one when we get down to it.
Mr. Trainee.
No, they've already been taken.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Ms. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 9 Alpha 1 for reading.
Okay, I'm going to go down and review this. We'll see if we get most of them, Ms. Grunstein. 9A1, 9A2, 9A3, 9A4, 9B4, 9B5.
I'm sorry. I heard a B4. I didn't hear a B5, and I also didn't hear an A4.
I heard A4.
Okay.
Yeah.
B5, he hasn't even gotten.
Yeah,
I'm missing them.
9 Bravo 5. I pulled it.
You pulled it. Sorry.
Okay, I'll slow down.
Thank you.
9B7, 9B8, and 9B8A from the addendum.
This D is in dog.
What's that? Delta.
Let's see, and I heard
There is no B.
9D6, 9D13, 9E1, 9E2, 9E3, and 9F6 from the addendum. That's it? Wow.
I didn't get it.
Not bad. Ms. Drummond? Or were you a leftover? Okay. Thank you. Okay, with those items approved, we now have the consent agenda before us.
Oh, well.
For that one's ready to vote.
Yeah.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Cromley?
Usually I...
That is approved unanimously. We'll now go into items pulled, beginning with 9A1.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Give me a chance to catch up here real quick. (9A1) Resolution Number 157, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating June 23, 2012 as Polynesian Flag Day. Who is going to read?
I am.
Mr. Chairman. Oh, Mr. Chairman, you need to ask for unanimous consent.
Yes.
No objections, get Mr. Flynn's.
Good.
Before you proceed, sir.
No objection. We have unanimous consent. Very good. You're going to present.
Whereas, on June 23, 2012, the Polynesian Association of Alaska will celebrate its 7th annual Polynesian Flag Day by sponsoring an event to share the culture and history of Polynesian Americans with the community of Anchorage and the state of Alaska. And whereas Polynesian Flag Day is the biggest holiday in American Samoa and has been established as an annual event honoring its political relationship with the United States and commemorating the raising of the American flag on Tutuila Island on April 17, 1900. And whereas the celebration of Polynesian Flag Day is also a time to commend the service of Polynesian Americans who have fought and those who continue to fight for freedom in service to the United States. And whereas Polynesian Flag Day is an opportunity to involve the Anchorage community in the Polynesian Association of Alaska's mission to strengthen individuals and improve families of the Polynesian community through cultural pride and education leading to successful employment. And whereas annually for the past 6 years, board members and officers of the Polynesian Association of Alaska have enjoyed the support of the community of Polynesian families to make this cultural event of sharing Polynesian dance, music, food, art, games, and education available to our Anchorage community free of charge. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes Saturday, June 23rd as Polynesian Flag Day and encourages the community of Anchorage to support the 7th annual Polynesian Flag Day event by joining the Polynesian community in its cultural celebration on the Anchorage Downtown Park Strip between L and P streets from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this day.
On behalf of the Polynesian Association of Alaska board members and the community, we want to say thank you all for the Assembly members for approving this resolution. And we invited all the public, diverse, anyone that want to be a part of our event, please come down at the Park Strip. And we will enjoy this day, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move to approve 9A2.
Okay. And we've got a second. 9A2, resolution number AR-163, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Mark Spano for his 30 years of service for the municipality of Anchorage. Unanimous approval? Any objections? Very well.
Mr. Spano, could you come down, please? Thank you. This is a resolution both recognizing and honoring Mark Spano for 30 years of service with the municipality. Whereas Mark Spano began his career with the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility in December 1981 as a Water Quality Technician 1, and after 3 successive promotions became the AWWU Treatment Division Water Quality Supervisor in 1984. And whereas, through his capable leadership of the Water Quality Section, AWWU successfully implemented many new drinking water regulations and operating permits, and completed the associated monitoring programs in addition to guiding operations staff in developing compliant air quality and risk management programs. And whereas in 2008, Mark was the first to occupy the new position of Environmental Compliance Advisor. Excuse me. And in that role, he ensured AWW compliance with drinking water, wastewater, biosolids, air quality, stormwater, and risk management regulations and permits. Whereas Mark has earned various awards, including Outstanding Professional Service Award in '97 from the Alaska Water Wastewater Management Association, AWW Employee of the Year, also in '97, AWWMA Statewide Laboratory Analyst of the Year, 2008. Mark has also served as supervisor of the AWW Laboratory Services section when that group was runner-up in the municipality's Support Services Work Unit of the Year award in '91. Whereas Mark has shared his expertise through service with other community groups, including Anchorage Waterways Technical Advisory Committee, 84 and 85, the Multi-Agency Hazardous Materials Emergency Response Plan Task Force in 87, Anchorage Hazardous Materials Commission and Local Emergency Planning Committee, 91 through 94, the State of Alaska Drinking Water Protection Advisory Council, 97, 98, and 2006 and 7, and the Anchorage Watershed Forum in '99. Whereas Mark has worked continually to increase his knowledge and his abilities, earning professional certifications such as Alaska Water Treatment 1, Alaska Wastewater Treatment 1, and California Environmental Compliance Inspector 4. Whereas Mark retired in April 2012, leaving AWW with an exemplary record of compliance with environmental regulations and permits, underscoring the utility's central role in ensuring the public health of Anchorage citizens and protecting the environment. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Assembly hereby recognizes and honors Mark Spano for his dedicated service to the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility, the citizens of this community, and the municipality. Passed and approved this day.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for this recognition. Thank you very much for this recognition. I'm amazed at how fast 30 years goes by. I continued to work for the municipality all those years for a couple of reasons. One is that I really believed in the mission of the utility. I think that supplying clean, healthy drinking water to Anchorage and treating the wastewater in a responsible fashion is probably as important as any work in maintaining a high quality of life in our community. And so I found meaning in playing some small role in that. Second, I think that the utility is a fine organization. I credit my coworkers, who I found to be competent and hardworking and caring, and I have developed a great deal of respect for the management team and the leadership at the utility. So I'm so grateful that I can look back at such a big chunk of my life and feel that it was time well spent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark, Mr. Honeman.
Mr. Spano, I probably thought you got away from the recognition anyway, for sure, since you retired in April, but I just, having served myself in the city, I know that it's tough work, and at the same time, it's, as you said, and well described and defined, very meaningful. So I just thank you for your many years of service to this community, and wish you well in your retirement, and don't goof it up like I did.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. We now have before us 9A3.
Move to approve.
Second.
Resolution number 158, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring and thanking Barbara Grunstein for her 9 years of public service to the municipality of Anchorage. Ms. Gray-Jackson, you're reading. Mr. Trainee, you're presenting. Unanimous approval, please. Mr. Flynn?
No objection.
Thank you.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring and thanking Barbara Grunstein for her 9 years of public service to the municipality of Anchorage. Whereas Barbara Gruenstein has managed the office of the municipal clerk for the past 9 years with professionalism, efficiency, and grace. And whereas during her tenure, Barbara has increased the transparency of the legislative branch of government by extensively revising the Assembly website to be more user-friendly to the public, digitally recording the Assembly meetings, thereby giving the public access to live streams of Assembly meetings and providing online access to action taken on individual agenda items. And whereas, to facilitate voters' access to elections, she successfully proposed to change the timing of the municipal reapportionment process to occur after the completion of the stage process to ensure that the Assembly districts would not split existing precincts. And whereas, Barbara served as the co-director of the Alaska Municipal League's newly elected officials training program and often mentored other clerks in communities across the state. And whereas Barbara Gruenstein was honored as the statewide recipient of the Alaska Municipal League's Municipal Official of the Year in 2006. And whereas during her tenure, she has served at the pleasure of 11 Assembly chairs, coordinated the flow of information with 4 mayors and their administrations. And whereas she has attended 9 years of Assembly meetings, coordinated agendas, streamlined the production of minutes, fulfilled requests for information from Assembly members and the public, and always served the public with openness, dedication, and courtesy. And whereas she brought 16 years of prior executive management experience in the telecommunications industry and 6 years of experience with state government policy development to her municipal post and contributed to the improvement of the operational efficiency at the clerk's office. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly hereby thanks Barbara Gruenstein for her 9 years of valued public service to the Assembly and the citizens of Anchorage.
It's very strange to be on this side, seeing a different view. Last Saturday was the 9th anniversary on the 16th, and it just seems so strange. I kind of feel like I've termed out. I've had 3 successive 3-year terms, like some of you. It's been a great job. It's been an honor to serve the city. I didn't ask for this job. Mr. Trainee and Mr. Teshi came knocking on my door. Never in my wildest dreams would have crossed my mind to be a municipal clerk. But it's been wonderful, and we counted up a rough estimate because I sign a lot of things, and so we did a rough estimate and figured that I've signed about 1,400 ordinances and 3,200 resolutions in 9 years. So anyway, thank you, and thanks everybody who sent notes and cards and flowers. I said to my younger daughter, I don't know if I'll have as many flowers when I die as I've got in the past month. But thank you, everybody.
Barbara, it's not going to be that easy. Mr. Horniman?
Well, Barbara, thanks again for all your years of service to the community. And I think for the public, it's interesting to note that it is somewhat a unique position. It's not like you're a career bureaucrat where you can stay in your job for as long as you choose or until your retirement date's chosen. And as you say, you're not in an elected office, so you don't have to stand before the public's vote every time. But gosh, you did a great job for the city and this community, and we're just going to miss you terribly. But we look forward to seeing you many, many times for it and bringing in your specialty baked goodies from time to time.
Oh, maybe I will.
Mr. Trainee.
Barbara, thank you very much for joining us on this little cruise we've been on all these years. I remember when Alan and I came to find you, and we were not your first choice, believe me, but you were ours because you were the best we could possibly get, the clerk's office. And I remember some of the people that didn't think you'd make a good clerk, you made an excellent clerk, renowned around this state for your ability to run that office, and thank you very much, Barbara. I think I've been chairman of 3 of the 11 chairmen you served under for a reason. You did everything we wanted you to do. Thank you. Appreciate it, Barbara.
Ms. Johnston?
Well, I know most of us hope we have as good a tenure as you've had. And I hope that we pass this 9D8 so that you have a nice trailhead for your trails down in Girdwood, and so you can enjoy them.
Ms. Bree Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Trainee and you too, Barbara, will remember that I sat in on that interview, and I was so excited when you got hired. And thank you for your service, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Barbara, from me, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that you agreed to stay with us through this month. And on a day like today with the incredible sunshine, you must be asking yourself why, but we couldn't have made it without you. You have been absolutely, unbelievably gracious in helping us to span this month. So on behalf of this entire body, thank you.
You're very welcome.
We now have before us on the addendum item 9A4, resolution number 169, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring the Child Care Assistance Program and its employee for their services to the community.
Move to approve.
Second.
I'm asking unanimous consent, approval. Who's reading?
I am reading.
Okay, Mr. Horniman.
Anchorage Resolution 2012-169, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring the Child Care Assistance Program and its employees for their service to the community. Whereas the municipality of Anchorage has proudly provided child care assistance since 1975 through the Department of Health and Human Services. And whereas during the past 37 years, tens of thousands of families have been served in this program, making it possible for those parents to work or complete their education. And whereas the state has awarded the grant for the Child Care Assistance Program to another agency effective July 1, 2012. And whereas June 29, 2012 will be the last day of operation by the municipality of Anchorage, hoping it's a child care program. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes the decades of contributions provided by the Child Care Assistance Program and its dedicated and caring employees, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this day and 2012. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Assembly members, I'm Diane Alger, and I've been the program manager for the last 24 years, and I've seen a lot. I remember back in the 90s when we had a wait list of over 1,000 families, and I have just been proud to serve the families of our community. They have gone on and, they've finished their education, and they've been contributing members of our community. So it's not only our families, but it's also the businesses within our communities where these families work. So it has been a real honor over these years. I also want to thank my staff. Together as a team, we have been awarded the Work Unit of the Year, and consecutively, we were also recognized with the Multicultural Diversity Award for the municipality of Anchorage. So we've had a lot of accomplishments, a lot of families that have been served, and I'm really proud to see here also because is Jewel Jones. She's in the audience, and she was one of the initial people where this program started back in 1975 with just $250,000, and now we've got I think at least $14 million going into the community. It is a state grant. So there's just been a lot that has been accomplished over the years, and I just wanted to thank her for initiating it, thanking the management team, our director, Diane Engel, and as well as Ken Takakua, our division manager.
Diane?
I'd just like to take 1 minute to say thank you. I always like to say that it's my privilege and pleasure to serve as the director of the Department of Health and Human Services because it truly is a privilege. And this is a bittersweet moment for us. This is an incredible staff who's worked many long years on a program that gives people a hand up and not a handout. And we did not get awarded the grant this year, and it's been difficult for the staff, but they keep going every day like troopers and working overtime to make sure that people are serviced. And I couldn't be more proud of anybody than I am of the members of my department, and especially this group and the dignity with which they have accepted this situation. And I'd just like to point out, I can't point out everybody, but Diane Alger is leaving us with 35 years of municipal service, and Dolores Jones, who is working with us on a temporary basis, was there for the very beginning and has retired but come back to help us temporarily. And I also would like to recognize Mr. Takakua, who is a great leader and division manager, mentored under the legend in Anchorage, Jewel Jones. So many of you know her, and we always appreciate her support and guidance. But thank you for this indulgence for my staff.
Very good. Ms. Osiander.
In this job, you we each get exposed to various departments in various ways. My first major legislation when I was on this body was to make the decision about licensure on child care homes when we took that from the state. And then I worked with your department when we did the child care homes legislation and the Title 21 legislation. And I have to tell you, I have been very impressed. You guys work so hard for families in the municipality, and you do us proud. It's a profound need, and I thank you very much for your years of service.
Ms. Johnston.
I first became aware of your department when I was with Anchorage Center for Families, and I haven't done much with you as an assembly member, but I do know that it's been a labor of love on your part, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
Well, I just want to thank each and every one of you for your collective years of service to the community, and I'm hoping that you've all moved into other positions. I'm going to hope and pray that that happens so we can retain your skills and experience. I know we've made an investment in you, and I know you've been returning that investment every day, so thank you for that. And just to share briefly, my kids are a bit older than the crew probably here, but I know Ms. Jones was there at the time, and when I was a young enlisted man and my wife was just choosing to start a career, we weren't making a lot of money, and we were one of those that needed that hand up for a bit to we didn't qualify for much, but we got a little bit of child care assistance for a little short period of time until our pay accelerated a bit. So we used the program ourselves, and it's been a wonderful program. And so thank you for administering and serving this program in the city and its community. Thank you.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to personally thank each and every one of you for your contribution to the people that live in the municipality of Anchorage. It's been really great, and I thank you for that. And before the meeting started, I had an opportunity to talk with some folks, because whenever I hear about changes within the municipality and programs going away, I always think about, well, who's going to lose their job? And it made me feel really good to find out that most of you are going to have jobs, and the ones who aren't are going to retire, so I'm real happy about that. And I also want to take a moment to thank Ms. Jones, and stand up, Jewel. Jewel's been around forever and involved in the program from the beginning. I just wanted to personally recognize her along with the rest of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We now have before us item 9B4, resolution number 165, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage approving the Spenard Water intertie and providing for assessment of benefited properties at the time of the service connection. Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility.
Second. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I pulled this for what I'm sure will be largely a symbolic vote, but I have one continuing frustration with AWWU. It's a very well-run utility, but the way the tariff is structured, water mains are paid for unfairly. Basically, though it's not a direct charge, but on the deed and the property for this one gentleman, we're going to put, what is it, $17,000 for something that I didn't investigate this. I'm assuming he didn't ask for it. In the past, it's been, particularly in my district, Peters Creek, a situation where neighbors actively didn't want it, but yet had to pay for it. I continue to request the utility to please reapply to the Regulatory Commission of Alaska to make this tariff fair. So I'm going to do I pulled it to do my primarily symbolic no vote. So thank you.
Ms. Drummond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find that an interesting assessment of this particular situation. This water main cost just under $500,000, yet the property owner who is connecting to it, it is costing them just under $17,000 to do so. I don't see how that's a problem, and I believe they did ask for it. If they didn't ask for it, they, at the very least, agreed to pay it. That's a heavily developed part of Spenard, and everybody should be served with water within that part of the community.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That's approved 10-1. We now have before us item 9B5, resolution number 166, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage regarding the Chester Creek at Muldoon Road realignment and channel improvement project management engineering, PM&E project 07-51, Public Works Department.
Move to postpone till the meeting of December 18th.
Second.
We need a motion to approve first. Mr. Honeman?
Move to approve.
Now you can speak, Mr. Honeman.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully move to postpone this item till the meeting of December 18th.
Okay.
I'd like to speak on the matter if I could.
Please.
I have
Mr.
Trombley, thank you.
Training? Okay.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Assembly, my colleagues, this is a particularly interesting resolution, and that I'm thankful to the administration for acknowledging under Section 2, which begins at line 36, that basically states that the realignment and the channelization improvements of the project would not impede the development of the Alaska Greenhouse property as a park, and does put in compliance with the resolution that we had passed previously in 340- the substitute agreement. Here's the issue and the conundrum that we have. The community has asked, and in our previous resolution, the community has asked to have a reasonable dialogue in an adult-like fashion with all the parties and stakeholders at play in the redevelopment and realignment of this creek. We all understand that there was an agreement made when the ordinance was passed and the approval of purchase of the property that that front portion would likely be developed for sale for commercial purposes. The community has spoken many, many times, loudly and clearly. I don't believe I need to tell any one of you that they really would prefer to have the entire section there as a community park, a town square park, if you will, in Muldoon, for many sound and good reasons. To that end, the realignment of the creek most likely will happen. I can capitulate to that. I believe there are some in the community still who don't believe that it should, but we do know that there was an agreement and some property improvements made across the street of Muldoon, and that there is already in play the realignment from their pipe for the receptacle side. That said, there's been one and only one option on the realignment of this creek, and the community believes that there are other options available and at play, and there have not been a meaningful discussion, and the only dialogue that has happened that I'm aware of with the administration of recent past, Mr. Trombley and I worked with Mr. Trombley, thank you for getting the meeting with the mayor, and for about 30 to 45 minutes we discussed the issues, and one sticky point was the belief that if we do not proceed this year, that there were likely the grant money would expire and we'd lose the funding. And we have found, and even the administration, it's my understanding, even though there was supposed to be a group meeting, that didn't happen, but the administration and their representatives have discovered that by applying for an extension, that it would most A, likely be granted, and B, there would be no fees, nor would there be any risk at losing the funding. So there is absolutely no harm in continuing to have dialogue. And I believe, Mr. Chairman and members of the Assembly, my colleagues, that if they were to have a meaningful discussion with members of this community, that we would likely be able to come back and revisit before the 18th, and I'd be glad to sponsor any resolution that would have community input and dialogue considering the options that are available to realign this creek to meet satisfaction of all parties. And that's all I'm asking for, is a little time for a meaningful dialogue to take place with the stakeholders and come up with the best rerouting of this creek.
Mr. Birch.
Yeah, I'm speaking against postponement. We were all, or a number of us were here when the municipality made a significant public investment, and MLMP did as well on this property. The plan has been set out here for realignment. It's actually been, the position has pretty well been fixed by the construction and the development that's happened on the west side of Muldoon in this area as far as the creek location. So I think postponement just further delays the program here. I think it's the grant money is important to bring to the cause, and I'm a no vote on postponement.
Mr. Trombley.
Mr. Vakelis, on page 3, starting on line 30, when this would be on the AM, well, actually, no. Line 32, if the review process determines that the realignment is outside the original scope of work, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service can choose to rescind the funding. What's the metric for that? It's a fairly broad statement. What's considered outside the scope? Is that if it's a 90-degree turn and we change it to an 85-degree turn, is that outside the scope? Is it a 10% degree?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Trombley. As I believe, Mr. Trombley, you know, and I think the Assembly members know as well, this project goes way back in history. It's been on the books for many years. There's been an awful lot of dialogue with the community over the years, as well as the federal agencies and the local and state agencies. And the contractor that was hired to basically determine the best realignment of the creek also coordinated with all these entities. The entities right now, all of them, agree with this alignment. If there is a major shift in the alignment, then the possibility exists that we may not get agreement for a new alignment. We do know that there were several different alignments that were looked at over the years. This is the preferred, this is the one that was agreed upon by all, as far as the federal agencies and the state agencies.
Anything else, Mr. Trombley? Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure that the rest of you, along with myself, received all the emails in the last couple of days from the folks who live in that community asking us to please take a little bit more time and postpone action on this. And we've also heard from Representative Peterson and Senator Wielechowski asking us to do the same. With that said, there's just simply no way that I can vote to move on with this when we've been asked by the people who live there to postpone it for another 6 months, and I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference if we do that and allow some more of an opportunity. And yes, it's been on the books for a long time, and it's been out there in the community, but the community has changed. There are people who are in our community now, that particular community, who were not there in the past. And so I will be supporting Mr. Honeman on his postponement request, happily. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Drummond.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement with my colleagues' extension. We're 3.5 years out from this project completion deadline. I think the problem can be solved well within that period and the grant retained. The community, as you know, came out in force the last time we heard on this issue a couple of months ago. We learned a lot of history from them and some new situations that I know I, for one, was not aware of. And I think we need to let the process work itself out with the community's approval and not just of the agencies who are seeking to complete it. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
And just lastly, I know we're not in the area for public testimony. I just ask for a little latitude. If it, by show of hands, members of the community that are interested in the extension of this resolution for the opportunity for a community dialogue. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, we're going to vote on postponement. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion fails 6-5. The original motion is back before us. Mr. Starr?
Well, I've been here now, and I've started to spend the public's money on this process for some time. A good 5 years' worth of energy has been put forth, and I have a couple comments which speak to, first off, I think we need to remember how parkland is designated and how we take municipally owned land owned by everyone and move it into parkland. And I think we need to be respectful of that. I also remember testimony from the commitments that we made and the promises we told Pfeffer Development that we would bring to the table on our portion of the alignment. That developer has spent significant amount of money getting ready to connect, and I think it's time to provide some certainty in that. So I don't think that we're going to see or we give away by approving this that we get a less of a quality product in the very end, or we get a better product in the very end. I'm going to urge that we get the money, we move the construction project down the road a ways, and then we open up the public hearing. Mr. Honeman and Mr. Trombley's urging to talk about the parkland dedications and how we would turn that into a resource best balance with the commitments and the money we've spent. So I'm going to urge that we get this moving forward. I think the public will recover, and we'll have the appropriate public display in front of us on an item to be submitted. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman?
I think I made quite a few comments on the previous amendment to postpone, and I'm saddened that we're not giving, in my opinion, good government here. I think that it's a matter of listening to the community and their concerns, and at the end of the day, a creek realignment likely would have happened, and we could have fulfilled our obligation, Mr. Starr, as I said earlier to you, but I'm going to have to sadly say no, simply because I in my heart, I've committed to listening to my community. And thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, this item is before us. Mr. Flynn?
No.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what the question is before us. I thought we had already
The
turned it.
approval of the original motion.
Thank you.
That item is passed 6-5. We now have before us 9B7, Resolution Number 168, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving return of the full $1,500 deposit for the April 3rd, 2012 election recount. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Who's going to speak to this? Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Birch pulled it. I'm happy to approve this and move on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Birch?
I pulled it because I don't like it, and I don't intend to vote for it. And if somebody wants to move it, they can have at it. But thank you.
Well, at this point, pardon? I know, but I have no second. I've got no motion and I've got no second.
Second. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Okay. So we got a motion and a second. Ms. Johnston?
Yes, I have some questions from the administration, and I apologize for not completing my homework here on this, but it's not that I may be not for this. I want to see what precedent it would set. Could you tell me in code what the Assembly has set up as far as reimbursing for election recounts?
I'm going to assume that question was addressed to me. Through the chair, Assembly member, the code states that they have to pay $100 per precinct. And
Todd, could you please identify yourself?
I'm sorry, Todd Sherwood, Assistant Municipal Attorney. And anyway, it sets out they have to pay $100 per precinct, and that deposit can be refunded only if there is a change in the outcome of the election or the proposition, or if there is a 4% difference. So, for example, whoever lost could still lose, but if there was a 4% change in the voting outcome, then there would be a refund. The third way in which there can be a refund is if the amount of the deposit was more than was needed to cover the recount. And in this case, I was told by the clerk's office that the cost for the people who did the recounting, that were hired special for the recounting, was something like $4,200. So obviously that was more than the $1,500.
So not one of those three items have been met with this recount, am I correct?
That's correct.
I have to say I'm very mixed on this because, as all of us know, when we found we had an election problem and we were concerned, we found out we as an assembly members could not call for a recount. But I also have concerns about setting a precedent for refunding funding so that in futures elections we might find a spot where it isn't quite as obvious that we had election problems and people could file for an election recount, and we might have set the precedent up to refund. So as I say, I'm mixed on it. I feel that the group did a great public service, and all throughout it I felt that it's been a big public service, but I am concerned about the precedent.
Ms. Osiander?
I think we should approve it. We basically could not do what we needed to do, and some citizens stepped in and took the burden on it. And I think we should pay them back. I'm going to vote yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Osiander, for your comments, because you're exactly right. You know, we receive from this effort the benefit of constructive citizen feedback, including the 3 documents that are attached, and I hope that every one of you got an opportunity to read it, you know. The code makes refund mandatory at 4%, but it's silent on non-mandatory return of deposit. And it's $1,500, folks. It's not a lot of money. What they presented to us at our work session on Friday, I'm sure it cost them, if not that amount, maybe even more. They've been a valuable asset to us in this process. And we now have an opportunity to fix Title 28 and maybe address this particular set of circumstances. So I would encourage my colleagues to just do the right thing and return this $1,500 to these citizens who have really done us a great favor, frankly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Trini?
Julia, is there a problem with us passing this from your perspective?
Through the chair, no, Mr. Trainee. As Assemblymember Gray Jackson has stated, the code provides for mandatory return of the deposit. It's silent on discretionary return. The resolution here was prepared to address the same concerns that Assemblymember Johnson brought forward. That is that in order to make sure that we're not creating a precedent, the distinguishing features of this refund are set out. In my opinion, I'm not even satisfied that a resolution is needed in order for the chair of the Assembly to authorize an expenditure like this from the Assembly's budget. If the money's in the budget, as you know, money can be transferred in and out. The resolution was prepared to, as I stated, to make sure that the circumstances of this particular refund were set out with specificity so that the clerk's office wouldn't be encumbered with any manner of refunds, as could be worrisome.
Thanks, Julia. I appreciate that because I intend to vote for this. We need to give the public back their money. And if this doesn't work for some reason, then I've got a rewrite of this after we deal with Title 28 that will give us the option to give the public back their money. And you and I can talk about if this doesn't work. Thank you, Julia.
Ms. Drummond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my opinion, we should be paying these folks for doing an incredible amount of work. We have paid consultants thousands and thousands of dollars for a report of the quality that was handed to us last Friday at the work session, and $1,500 is almost insulting in terms of how much we owe these citizens for helping us discover the issues that happened in this campaign, in this election. This was not simply a recount. This was a discovery process of many, many issues of procedure, protocol, code, and the report is, these are not professional consultants in election issues, but I think they should be well qualified to do that in the future, and I hope they won't have to do it again. But I support this resolution absolutely, and if it would make sense, I would amend it to increase the amount, but that's not the point of this. And in addition, it's my understanding that there's a significant balance in the elections fund of the budget, and this will simply thank these folks for doing the work that the Assembly will definitely appreciate as we move through the Title 28 process. Thank you.
Ms. Johnston?
Yes, because I am just concerned about the precedent. I'm not concerned as far as, because I do feel that they've provided a great public service. But do you feel, because you wrote this resolution citing this particular election, that we will not be setting any precedent, or do you feel that it will take changes in Title 28? Julia.
Through the chair, Assemblymember Johnson, the recitations that are in this resolution are not only specific to the 2012 election, but are specific to different details of the 2012 election that we have been able to work through and discuss here. If your question is, do I think that we need to change Title 28 to allow this refund, I do not.
No, it's just my question about precedent. I mean, as I say, I feel that these folks provided a great service, but my concern is down the road, if we open it up, if we refund this time, what are we opening up?
Okay. If you have another election, through the chair, like this one, then I think that you can expect that the precedent in this resolution would have an equal effect.
Ms. Tucker, I'm showing you in the queue.
Call the question, Mr. Chairman. Let's call the question, get this thing done.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
That motion passes 10-1. We now have before us...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Moved for immediate reconsideration, urge no vote.
Second. Okay. Got a motion to approve and a second for reconsideration. Any discussion? Please vote.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Flynn's no. That motion passes unanimously. We are now at item 9D6, which is Assembly Memorandum Number 372, Clapp, Peterson, Timison, Thorson, and Johnson, LLC Law Offices Professional Legal Service Contract Amendment Number 4, relating to Kennedy, ELTALV, MOA, for $45,000 from the Department of Law.
Move to approve.
Mr. Horniman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know Mr. Wheeler's not here, so this may be a matter that may need to get postponed to the next meeting. I don't, I'm curious as to, we've now on a fourth amendment here, and the total now going up to $175,000. What are we exposed to as a municipality, or is it something we can discuss openly, or does it have to be in executive session because it's just a legal matter? I'm concerned that we're going to spend $250,000 when we were exposed to a $200,000 limit or some, you know.
Again, this is Todd Sherwood from the Municipal Law Department. Through the chair, you're correct, Mr. Honeman, that would be something we would need to discuss in executive session. I can tell you that the reason for the additional request at this time is because there's been a substantial number of substantive motions in this case, which takes a lot more attorney time, and we need to get the money now in order to make sure the case moves forward so that we don't miss any deadlines. But we certainly could schedule an executive session to discuss the case with the Assembly and your very question.
Thank you.
Mr. Trini?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a real concern with this one and others. We're seeing a pattern coming out of the Department of Law. Well, a sole source contract goes out for $25,000. Then they keep having these contract modifications. You remember a month ago, it went out for $25,000 sole source, then came in for changed for another $100,000. I would like you to request the Department of Law an executive session. I want to know how many of these in the last year have come a sole source, and then how the contract's been modified since then. I've just got some concern as to where we're going, because if we're going, we should put them out to bid. And I'm going to be a no vote on this until they get the point that we're not putting out sole sources, then let it keep increasing. $175,000 is a lot of money, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had some questions early this month on this particular litigation, and Mr. Wheeler, and I thought we'd have to go on executive session, but Mr. Wheeler was kind enough and said no, and he forwarded a confidential email to me and copied all the Assembly members on this. And he answered some questions, and there are two other questions that I really like answers to, and I'm not sure if I ask them if, they need to go into, we need to go into executive session or not, but if I'm crossing the line, just please stop me. The first question is there any chance of settling prior to trial?
Through the chair, that would be a matter to discuss in executive session.
Okay, and I'm thinking that the next question probably is too, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's the likelihood of the MOA winning this case? We spent a lot of money.
And again, that would be for executive session.
Okay, I'd really appreciate, as Mr. Traney suggested, an executive session on this and other issues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Osiander?
I just want to caution the body that though customarily low bid is the way to go, getting legal advice, low bid is not the way to go. And that it's pretty imperative that you go with somebody who's got expertise or background in a particular field. So that's my only comment, sir.
Mr. Trombley.
My question is to Department of Law. So we started out with $25,000, approved this $175,000. Do you have a time frame as far as will this cover us, or can we expect another $5,000, whatever the amendment coming through? I mean, what's the time frame on? Maybe you can't answer that. What's the time frame on the rest of the case?
Right now, it's scheduled to go to trial next May. It was originally scheduled to go to trial this May. It is very difficult in any legal case to estimate costs because, especially when you're defending a case, you don't know what the other side's going to do. Typically, they file many motions, and that has happened in this case probably more than in a typical case. So to answer your question, we can't with any great certainty predict that this would be the final request. We try to keep it as close as we can to what we expect, but many things could happen between now and next May, and so yes, there could be another request. It's not at all like building a building or a bridge where you can figure what your costs are. I will say in addition that just speaking of the matter of going to a bid or picking someone you know. In this case, Linda Johnson worked for the Department of Law as deputy municipal attorney and is very familiar with these types of cases. And certainly there are many, many cases we handle in-house. This was one of those that it was felt it was better to have outside counsel that could devote plenty of resources to it.
Well, if it's going to be another year before trial, we can safely assume this is going to come back to us for a larger increase again. At the same time, what's the cost of delay? What if we don't approve this today? Will everything stop? Will it?
And I can't give you an exact timeline, but when Mr. Wheeler and I discussed this, the problem is if we run out of money, then the law firm can't continue to work for us, obviously, and there even runs the risk of not meeting deadlines, sanctions from the court, that sort of thing. So there is a risk. How much wiggle room we have, I don't know, but typically we bring these things to the Assembly at a point that we feel the additional money is needed and the amount that we feel is needed to keep the case going forward at a proper time frame.
Well, thank you. I agree with Mr. Traney that some sort of message has to be sent. Unfortunately, it's almost like you're building a bridge and you're halfway across and you can't stop at that point. To me, there's got to be some better source of figuring out how much we're going to cost, because $25,000 for this kind of case, I think, was a little bit low. But I agree with you, Mr. Traney. It's almost like, what do you do at this point?
I know.
So, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Traney.
Debbie, all my concern is going sole source on these. And, Mr. Chairman, I also want, in conjunction with this legal, I want to know a list of people they've gone sole source with and how long it's been since the person we're going sole source with has been a city employee. Because I think what we may find is these attorneys have worked for us in the past as city employees. I get concerned when sole source are given out to people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn.
No, Mr. Chairman.
That motion passes 6-5. And Mr. Traney, I will set up an executive session with the legal department.
Thank you, sir.
We now have before us 9D8, Assembly Memorandum Number 374, sole source contract with the Alyeska Resort Development LLC, Alyeska to construct an Alberg Avenue extension in Girdwood for the municipality of Anchorage Community Development Department, CDD, in the amount of $2,250,000.
I'd like to move the A version with the $2,750,000.
Okay.
And urge approval.
Did we get a second? Okay. Discussion, Mr. Starr?
I read this a couple times. I'm just wanting some clarity, perhaps even just on the record, that this is the right thing to do. I don't see traditionally PM&E's stamp of supervision on here. So, Mr. Vikalis, how do we know that the money is going to be spent for purposes therein, and we're not going to see construction letting for $1 million and 2.75 goes to the developer for a healthy profit? What's the safeguards there to make sure that it gets done?
Yes, sir. We will provide oversight from the representative municipality on this project. So, in other words, as the private developer is developing the project, we will be there to inspect, we will be there to check records and everything else, just like we would on other projects where we have allowed someone else to do it.
Well, in the generalities with the general site preparation and the clearing and the improvements to the land, is there a scope of work developed already? Because traditionally it's let with a scope of work and a low bidder, and everybody knows what we're going to do at the end of the day. So my challenge is, just that, is how do we know what the scope of work is that we're watching over?
We have met out on the site with the developer numerous times, and we've also had numerous meetings with him. We've discussed the scope. We've discussed exactly where the road really needs to go to make sure it stays within the bounds that it's acceptable. So I think we've got a pretty good handle on it, Mr. Starr.
What do I tell the other developers that perhaps could say that they're qualified to do the work as well?
If they enter into a private development agreement with us, that, they can do that, just like this party did. This is for the benefit of the municipality.
I'm with you on that. Let me ask you the final question. Is the grant from the state was $3.5 million. We haven't fully expended it yet. When do you anticipate coming back to us for spending the rest, and how will that be spent? Or are we going to reimburse PM&E for their services rendered?
They actually will get a portion, they'll get a small portion for their admin oversight. But in answer to your actual question, as far as the timing for the money, I don't have that right now. But
I don't need it now, but we're only appropriating a certain amount. I just don't want that to be sort of out there and either forgotten about, or if we can seize the moment.
Yes, sir. I'll get you that answer.
That'd be very helpful. And then maybe a secondary action to appropriate formally to PM&E so we can keep all that above board.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm happy to see the improvements. That's a good place to work, economic engine. So I only have those concerns that we have accountability to other people's money. Thank you.
Mr. Trainee.
George, just a question. This is over $2 million. Why sole source? I'm trying to figure out why we didn't put it out to bid. Was that the way the money came out of the state, or what?
No, this is, in the code, we have an ability to, and I forget what the term is, and I may ask either Jerry or Sharon to come up and explain what the term is, but there is the ability of a developer for the betterment of the municipality as well as the development being able to come in on a private development agreement and basically do the project. So we have that ability. This particular developer proposed to do the work, and we, of course, there's criteria that they have to meet. He met all of that criteria, and so we basically allowed this to happen. For more details, I could ask either Jerry or Sharon, probably Sharon Sharon Walsh to answer specifically, but we have that mechanism available to us and have done it several times in the past.
Okay, thank you, George. You give me all the, don't worry about it. George gave me all I need. I just want to know why we're going sole source. And you've answered that. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Johnston.
So we did start out this process with an MOU, and it's become apparent that we needed to do this first before the municipality and Alyeska formed their MOU. Do you have a timeline for that MOU?
I'll ask Ms. Walsh to answer that question.
Through the chair, this will be done through an improvement to public place agreement, and that's our normal process where developer signs up and presents design drawings, normally puts forth a guarantee. In this case, we're holding the money. We'll review the drawings. Once they're complete, the developer will put out for competitive bids. There to at least three contractors to bid on it, and they'll be overseeing it. The benefit to municipality is they'll be combining this with their own work, so we should have some economy of scale and scheduling and that kind of thing. So normally, these agreements have like a 24-month or 24 months is a pretty standard amount of time. We hope to have design done this year and construction next year.
And as far as Mr. Stars and Mr. Trainee's concerns, will those be met?
In terms of oversight?
Right.
Yes, it'll be the situation where the developer will hire a private inspector. I believe it'll be someone from Dowell Engineers. I'm not sure on that, but they'll hire a private inspector who will monitor the construction. We'll also have oversight inspection, either one of the private development inspectors or PM&E's inspectors, depending on personnel availability. And then we'll also be reviewing the costs to be sure that they're staying in line.
And as far as the $750,000, will we have an itemization as far as what where?
You mean the additional
Right, because it was a $3.5 million grant.
The grant total is $3.5 million. There's a certain amount that's retained by the municipality for administration. OMB gets a certain percentage and so on. And then the personnel costs of PM&E and private development will be billed back to that as well. So that's to cover those inspector costs and the oversight costs.
And we'll get an itemization of that, or we'll get
Yes, those are tracked closely by project times, personnel time and all that.
And what's that percentage that we take off for administration?
I'm not schooled in that precisely. It's an OMB issue. I think it's 2 to 3%, something like that.
Well, I do urge a yes vote on this. This was an appropriation by the state, and it was actually lobbied heavily by Girdwood and Alyeska Resort as a way to further develop and make, first of all, the Winter Creek Trail access accessible for the Girdwood and all of us, and provide parking. And then it will also allow for additional and better parking if you ever use the tram, and there will be further development as far as lodges. So it has on their property, not on our property, but this allows, and it's all part of the master plan. It also is part of eventually a road that's supposed to go all the way to Crow Pass, but that's going to be a long time in coming. But it does give us access to our Heritage Land Bank land.
Mr. Horniman.
I just wanted to clarify, and I think I followed through here, and I'm not sure if Ms. Walsh is. The original 2011 grant was $2.25 million, and it looks like under 2012 state grant came in at 3.5, is that right? I'm looking for approval for 2.75 million with an automatic change to have the authority to change the amount of another $250,000. So in essence, $3 million is what.
Right. To clarify on the way the numbers came down, and I believe it's in some of your backup memorandums, the state grant itself is $3.5 million. The original amount of 2.25 was the original estimate for design and construction, and the amount that we felt that would have to be taken care of by or managed by the developer. And as we took a closer look at that before bringing it to the body, because we wanted to be sure, and as we got additional information on where they would connect to the water line and that sort of thing, we realized that we probably needed to beef that number up a little bit. So that was the reason for the change that's before you now. So and that does have contingency and is fairly good experience on costing from the some other projects that were recently done in Girdwood. So we're fairly confident with it, but with anything, we need to allow for administrative ease to have a suggested amount for a change order. So that was the suggested amount that purchasing instructed us to put in for change order authorization.
But just to follow up Mr. Starr's concern, I know we've been faced with some projects that we thought were going to be, I can recall one, I believe, over near Lake Edison Tudor, where MLP was doing some work and got into a jam with the way underestimating the amount of cost to have to bring dirt away and bring gravel in or something and storing it. And so, I'm concerned that I know that dynamics are different up on the side of a mountain, and probably the soils are great and all that kind of stuff, but just really concerned about it. I mean, it looks to me as if we have $500,000 left on the table on the off chance something goes over a little bit before we have to worry about where we're going to go for other funding if we run into some concerns. Is that how I'm reading it?
Correct.
Okay.
Seeing no one else in the queue, I'm going to vote. Now be aware you are voting on 9D8A. Mr. Flynn.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
That motion passes unanimously. We now have before us 9D13, Assembly Memorandum 379, Amendment Number 5 to PERS Construction Company, LLC.
Mr. Chairman, traditionally I exempt myself from this. I had a property abutting this that I developed, and I could stand to gain from those improvements. So,
Would you like to leave the room, Mr. Starr?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve. The second.
Second.
Discussion. We need a second.
Second.
Okay. Please vote. Mr. Flynn.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
That is passes 10 with one recused. We are now at item 9E1, Information Memorandum 45, 2011 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, CAFR, Finance Department, Controller, Division, Finance Department.
Move to accept.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and to accept. Ms. Osiander?
I wonder if we could have just a brief recap of the significant findings specifically related to the port. I'm assuming all of them were port-related? Well, I'll hear from you.
Yes.
All right.
For the record, my name is Michelle Drew, and I'm the auditor with Macunda Cottrell doing the audit for the municipality. Specifically regarding the question at hand, the three significant or unusual items that were discussed earlier in the evening, I want to point out, first of all, significant and unusual transactions were under professional auditing standards. We are required to disclose those elements to the audit committee. It does not mean that they're errors or that they're wrong, so just so we're perfectly clear. The first item had to do with the port and actually had to do with the fact that there was a contribution of land from JBER this year. In exchange, the municipality has agreed to assume possible environmental remediation costs, if any, as well as have agreed to build a road to allow access to the property in exchange for receipt of a property valued at approximately $10 million. The next item that was on that of the three was cost of issuance associated with commercial paper. Generally accepted accounting principles typically require that cost of issuance of debt is capitalized and amortized over the life of the debt. Commercial paper by its very nature is short-term, so if you were to capitalize it and amortize it over the life of the debt, because it's short-term, it would immediately fall to expense. On the other hand, accounting principles allow for interest costs associated with capital construction to be capitalized as part of the project and then be depreciated over the life of the project. And so it was the municipality's contention that the cost of issuance in this case really are serving in lieu of interest costs that would otherwise have been incurred. And so those costs were in fact capitalized with part of the project. The last and third item actually is not associated with the port specifically, but is associated with the jail lease. The state of Alaska did refund bonds this year, and the municipality is engaged in something that's identified as a net zero lease, whereby the state, the municipality has outstanding debt, the state pays the municipality uses those payments to then pay the debt payment. It is a net zero transaction to the municipality. This year, the state refunded bonds and made a significant advance payment to early pay off a portion of that debt. And that payment was made to the municipality. The municipality, in turn, used those funds to advance pay off its own debt in a net zero transaction. All of these items, we believe, are in accordance with the accounting rules. We don't believe they're wrong, but again, because of their kind of unusual, significant nature, we are required to disclose them to the audit committee.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one, after she's finished, I do have one question for the administration on that land exchange with the port. Do you want me to ask it now or wait?
If she's done.
I have a question for her, so if you don't mind just jumping out of the queue, then she wouldn't have to come back up.
Okay, Mr. Starr.
The concept about capitalizing the debt service for the commercial paper, you had mentioned that briefly in one of your points of accounting clarification, I'll call it. What happens in a mid-year pay down of a debt service? And I'm concerned that if we decide to change the amount of money that's out for commercial paper in a downward trend, say from what it is currently at $40 million, dropping it down to say a $20 million with reallocation of some available monies, how do you uncapitalize the debt service that might have been charged to the job?
You would not uncapitalize what's previously been recorded.
Yeah.
Any costs incurred associated with the interest expense, or in this case, the cost of issuance, they go into the cost of the project. Therefore, that cost becomes the basis of the item's cost for accounting purposes. If you were to advance pay off a portion of the debt going forward, that means you incur less interest
Right.
cost that no longer gets added to the cost of the project, but the previously capitalized pieces just get depreciated along with the life of the rest of the asset.
Why do it that way, though, in terms of a commercial paper application, just because it's technically legal, but why do it that way? And I ask you this because when you look at the other report, the port's financial summary report, I believe you did that as well, you can't see clearly the cost of the debt in that report. You have to go to this one. And so it's kind of, to me, I couldn't find it in the summary report of the $40 million carried forward debt summary. Why is it not in the port's summary report of the cost of the project?
I guess I'm not clear I understand the question. The accounting rules in this CAFR with respect to the port and the accounting rules in the port's financial statements are the same.
Okay.
The accounting rules are the same. I don't know if there was a specific disclosure in the total amount that was capitalized that was associated with the debt or not. I don't know that that specific disclosure was in there. What I can tell you is the reason that a commercial paper mechanism was used was simply to take advantage of extremely low interest rates that were actually more advantageous than long-term rates for example, revenue bonds.
I get that. I appreciate that. But I'll maybe send you an offline note because I don't see us acting on the port's financial report in summary. But I'll run the question to you on that. Thank you for your thoroughness.
Ms. Osiander?
I was answered already. Thank you.
You were answered. Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn? Mr. Flynn? We seem to have lost Mr. Flynn again. Yep. That motion passes 9-2, showing 2 absent. We are now in item 9E2, Information Memorandum 46, contract awarded between $50,000 and $500,000 through formal competitive process for the month of May 2012 Purchasing Department.
Move to accept.
Second.
And Mr. Chairman, my question on this one may have been answered, but I had to leave home fairly early today, and so I didn't get to read emails. I wanted clarification on this $500,000 sole source to JTA Construction. What are they going to be doing for a year for $500,000? This isn't sole source? I'm sorry. I misspoke. Contract.
Through the chair, Ms. Osiander, typically what happens is term contracts do incidental work, as needed basis, if you will. There's lots of variables in park projects rather than go out to bid or quote. Small items, bollard replacements, could be signage, could be a handful of things, but they're not large. And
So you typically give a contract of this size? I just had
well, it's very broad. It's very encompassing, and it's over an annual period.
It's the same as last year?
That I can't speak to. There are different forms of term contracts. This is just one of them, and I can't speak to exactly which one, this one apply. But you've got another one for Seacoast, which does larger work. I think Mr. Haddon can probably speak to the process for this one.
I was just told that I did get a detailed response, so I'll read it later.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think both Mr. Haddon and I both responded to you earlier. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rada. Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion passes 10 with 1 absent. We now have before us 9E3, Information Memorandum 47, Sole Source Procurement Report for the month of May 2012 Purchasing Department.
Move to approve.
Move to accept. Sorry. Accept. Second. My question on this was, and I would have asked it in an email, but I figured the public would like to know, under Bauer compressors for $15,000, it's replacement parts on an as-required basis for Bauer breathing compressors for the fire department. Is this to fix the issues that the departments had with their compressors and their breathing apparatus? Is there someone who can answer that question?
In answer to your question, no.
It's not?
No.
Oh. Is there a move to replace those? Is there?
There is not a move to replace them, sir. We've been working with the company itself that manufactures them. They've come up here and they've actually made good on quite a few of them. They've modified, and so this is not for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kalis. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Trainee.
George, just a quick question for you. $16,215 to allow people to download music? Library, why are we doing that?
99 cents on it.
We do have that program in the library, sir.
Okay. Let me ask it a different way. How many are they allowed to download at our expense?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
If you'd find out for me, because usually this is something that people can get on their iPhones or their iPads or whatever they're using, and it's free. I'm just trying to figure out why we're paying for it.
Because this is legal.
Whatever, sir. I don't know anybody chasing them down to arrest them for it. Just find out how many they're allowed to download. I just found it interesting that we're having a free music download. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion passes 10 with one absent. We now have before us 9F6 on the addendum, which is ordinance or resolution number 116, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage providing for a revision of the Anchorage School District financial plan for FY 2012-2013. The Anchorage School District public hearing scheduled for 7/10/12.
Mr. Chairman, before this gets submitted, I have some questions about it, and it's not an interest to try to delay the action that we need, but I'm hoping that we can all recognize a couple deficiencies. First off, in the title, what we're actually doing is we're appropriating money, and we don't see that in the title of the action. What I also am challenged by is some of the information I got from Ms. Tucker about the requirements that we have to modify an AO with a resolution. In technical speak, I'm not sure we can do that, so I'm going to ask briefly if this action will allow us to modify. The budget was put forth in an AO, and now we're looking for a resolution to modify that. Also, final clarity is that we just need to be clear in our titling and our work on what we're doing. And this is actually a modification to the annual budget, not to be confused with the financial plan. So it would be helpful if a resolution sticks to perhaps get a substitute version. And again, it isn't an interest to slow down the process to further discuss the matter. It's to really bring attention to some of the things that we need to do. We're going to revisit an ASD budget appropriation again if we let this go through, that speaks to that gap between the $7 and $10 million that's hanging out there. So I guess I'm making the practical sense in that I don't want to set a trend that just sort of says, hey, you can modify school district budgets by $38 million just by putting a resolution in front of us. That's pretty specific, as well as I want to see the impact on the local, and how you impact the local is by putting it in the title. And so if there is no local impact, then let's say that in the title. However, if we could address the local impact of what that's considered maybe the overtaxation based on that thing that we're all aware of that came out of Juneau last minute, perhaps the title could read that and we could capture all of that. So if it's just liberty, I'm not trying to maximize the meeting here, but Ms. Tucker, can you explain this concept between an AO being required to modify an AO? Am I right in that, or do we have some discretion there?
Mr. Starr, through the chair. Mr. Starr asked me a question right before the meeting by email, which was, did the title of the resolution need to state a number for an appropriation? And so I looked at this item, and I ran it through the code, and the things that I mentioned to Mr. Starr right before the meeting, which my understanding is he would pursue with somebody who might know more than I do, is I didn't see where, with the Assembly's budget, it's very clear in charter and ordinance that the Assembly's budget is approved by ordinance and then can be amended by resolution. There's no comparable code provision like that for the school district budget. The Assembly can pass the school district budget in whole. The school district can't spend more money than is included in their budget, and so if they're getting money, then they do need to come back to the Assembly and revise their budget. I didn't understand why this resolution was called their financial plan. I didn't understand it. When the Assembly passed the school district's budget, it passes the budget and approves an appropriation. Here, it wasn't clear what the intent was. Is the intent of the resolution to increase the budget but not have an appropriation? The title is for this year, but it makes reference to a financial plan, which in the code and charter is to be a 6-year financial plan. So I couldn't, in the time allowed, run everything to ground, but there were more questions than I had answers for.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate to ask for a revision, or do you want to have them set it aside and resubmit? And it's not if it can stay under a resolution format, there's nothing wrong with having the resolution submitted as an S version and still hear it on the 10th. That's not my goal here, but I would really want some clarity and then the opportunity to find the question that's in front of us so that we can take care of the rapidly required question. Now, what do we do with the remaining tax dollars? I can't tell if it's in here. And again, if we're going to appropriate or unappropriate tax dollars, then not get into debate of the item tonight, but it's not clear, and I think it's time to step back and sort of demand the stuff that comes in front of us meet code language, and the difference between a resolution and an ordinance is big, especially when you're talking this much money. So I'm looking for a rule of chair on what we do with the item and who we ask to revise it.
Mr. Starr, I've got to admit you're asking me a question that's above my pay grade. But what I am going to do is, if the body doesn't have a problem, I would like to hold this item over until after the dinner break to get some direction and come back and handle it at that time. Is there, Mr. Trainee?
Mr. Chairman, why don't you just deal with this before the meeting ends tonight? Because we go to lunch, we come back, there may be something else. Why don't you just make a ruling that we deal with this before we close business tonight, Mr. Chairman?
The body okay with that? Very well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What I want to do before we go to our dinner break, because this basically finishes us with a consent agenda, do we have anyone here that was appointed to a board or a commission this evening? If so, we'd sure like to recognize them. Come up and introduce yourselves, please. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Terry Tauschek, a dentist here in Anchorage, and I've been appointed to the AWWU Board of Directors.
Not yet, you haven't, sir. You're after our dinner break.
But thank you anyway.
Thank you, sir.
Glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do have a question for you, but I'll get to that later, sir.
Mr. Trainee, why don't you ask him the question now? He may not want to...
Doctor, your position on fluoride.
Very much in favor of fluoride.
Thank you, sir.
On the record for me.
All I wanted to know.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hello. For the record, Jeannie Collender, here to serve on the Women's Commission Board. Just honored to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being willing to give it your time. We appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is N. Bhattacharya. I have been appointed, or I'm supposed to be appointed to the Investment Advisory Commission. I'm a professor at the University of Alaska Anchorage. I teach finance.
Thank you. We appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Mark McCaffrey, and I'm here to be appointed to the Solid Waste and Recycling Advisory Commission.
Thank you. We appreciate your serving. Also, congratulations to Mrs. Jones, Barbara Jones. During our action this evening, she was appointed our new municipal clerk. So, Barbara, congratulations. And if I can, before the break, we got some Boy Scouts back there. Would you please come up and introduce yourself? Okay.
Mr. Chair, let me just change order and take up the dentist now.
Okay. Yeah.
My name is Jackson Bay. I'm from Troop 214 on Post 20, American Eagle Post 28.
Hello, my name is Quinn Johnson, Troop 214.
Good. Thank you for being here. Come back and see us, okay? Thank you. Mr. Trini, would you like to make a motion?
Change the order of the day and take up item 11A before our dinner break. Since the dentist is here, no use to make him wait while we go and eat.
Very good. Do we have any problem with doing that? Anybody opposed? Very well. Yes.
I'm not
Oh, Miss
opposed.
Gray Jackson. I'm sorry.
That's okay, but I just wanted to tell this gentleman here, I'm not going to even try and pronounce your name, but you have been appointed, so you can go home and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations.
That was very nice, Miss Gray Jackson, and if I were you, I would run and get out in the sunshine.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We should take up 11B as well.
11B as well.
Well, Lottie went home, I think. She was here earlier.
Yeah.
11A.
11A.
11A we're taking up.
11A is a subject of the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility Board of Directors, appointment Terrence B. Terrence, I'm not even going to try.
Move to approve.
Tachek.
Mr. Chairman?
Second.
Okay. We have unanimous approval? We do. Congratulations, and thank you for being willing to serve. Okay, we're going to take a 20-minute break, and we'll be back and wrap up for the evening. Back to order. We have before us item 11B, Assembly Memorandum 341, subject the Anchorage Community Development Authority Board of Directors appointment, Lottie M. Michael, CCIM. No motion?
Isn't it a hearing?
No hearing?
If it's 11, sorry.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't pick up on the motion. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, unanimous approval. Mr. Flynn? Do we have Mr. Flynn yet? Okay. That is a unanimous approval. We move into item 14A. AO number 52, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 7.50, to allow compliance with federal equal opportunity requirements to stand in the place of local contract and reporting requirements to promote. Thank you. This item is before us. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none. Second. Okay, seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Ms. Drummond?
That motion passes 9 with 2 absent. We now have before us item 14B, AO number 53, an ordinance authorizing the municipality of Anchorage to grant a revocable use permit to GCI for continued operation of an antenna and telecommunication equipment in Kincaid Park. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one? Second. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn? That item passes 9 with 2 absent. We're now on item 14C, an ordinance authorizing a lease of office space in the John Thomas Building located at 3rd Avenue. This item is before us. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, this item is before us.
Second.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn? That item passes 9 with 2 absent. We now have before us item 14D, an ordinance, AO number 49, an ordinance amending the zoning map and approving the rezoning of approximately 4.5 acres from PLI. Thank you. This item is before us. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly. My name is Jim Sawhill. I'm with Lounsbury & Associates, and I'm here tonight representing the Mental Health Trust Land Office in the proposal tonight to rezone 4.5 acres from PLI to ROSL. The property is located at the corner of 40th and Laurel Street. It's in the UMed district. The intent is to develop the property as a medical office building. The proposal tonight is compatible with the long-range transportation, or with the 2020 plan. We're in conformance with the UMed plan. We had unanimous approval from the P&Z, and we would urge your support tonight and be happy to answer any questions.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before us.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn? That item passes 9 with 2 absent. We now have before us item 14E, AR 161, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use.
Waive reading.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My son works for this firm. As you ruled before, I don't have a conflict of interest with Joshua working there since.
I will.
He just lives in my house.
I understand, sir, and I'm not going to allow you to leave the room. You will vote.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, this motion item is before us.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Trainee, do you have a conflict because you seem to like this restaurant?
I have no conflict, but if they'd get the other one that's supposed to go with Olive Garden, I'd be really happy, ma'am.
Mr. Honeman.
This Red Lobster being here, you know, it'd be nice to have it here.
Well, speaking of that, I don't have a conflict, I don't believe, but I have been to the Tohoutney Commons store from the minute they developed the land and started it. It's a wonderful, wonderful eating establishment. They've been very good neighbors, and
Second
I urge
that
support.
motion. Call the question.
Good place to eat.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Yes. It shows 9, approval by 9, 2 absent.
That was unanimous by the 9 that are here, sir.
We now have before us item 14F, AR number 162, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use for a beverage dispensary.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is now before us. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, this item is before us.
Second.
Seeing none one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Oh, excuse me. All the heck.
That motion carries 9 with 2 absent. We now have before us item 14G, AR number 152, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $189,089.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before us. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this is before us.
Move to approve.
Second.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Right.
That motion carries 9 with 2 absent. We now have before us item number 14H, AR number 156, a resolution approving the proposal to construct a new U.S. Coast Guard facility co-located with the State of Alaska Emergency Operations
reading.
Center. Thank you. This item is now before the body. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item on the floor.
Second.
Move to approve.
Okay. Seeing and hearing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Flynn? That item passes 10 with 1 absent. We are now back to 9F6. Do we have some direction for the chair from legal?
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Sherwood from the Law Department, and we've put together 3 fine legal minds here during the break. What we recommend noting, first of all, that this resolution is on for introduction, and the public hearing is scheduled for July 10th. So what we're recommending that it be amended, and we've got some amending language here I can give to the chair at any time. It's handwritten, but the original budget, of course, was introduced as ordinance, and we all agree that an ordinance has to be amended by an ordinance, and so the title should reflect that. We will need an ordinance number. For now, we'll leave that blank unless the clerk is able to magically come up with an ordinance number. So it would simply, the title would simply read, an ordinance, that would change, of the municipality of Anchorage providing for a revision of the Anchorage School District budget instead of financial plan for fiscal year 2012 to 2013 and appropriation. And then we've made a couple other changes where it said resolves, now therefore Anchorage Assembly ordains rather than resolves. And then in the right-hand column where it references revised financial plan, we've deleted AR 2012-116, and it would be replaced with AO number 2012-blank. Same thing on the third page, and then section 2, line 12, that this ordinance, rather than resolution, is effective upon passage and approval. One of the reasons, of course, or one of the purposes of the title is also to put the public on notice, and by using the words budget, we feel that better puts them on notice that this is a revision to the original budget. So that is our recommendation. And I can give this language to the chair if you'd like at this time.
I move to accept the revisions.
Second.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Starr for pointing this out. I think it was I greatly appreciate it.
We just have to vote on the amendment first, I think, don't we? And then going to.
Ms. Johnston, could you please reintroduce this with the new language?
This is an Anchorage ordinance for 2012. An ordinance of Municipality of Anchorage providing for the revisions of the Anchorage School District budget for year 2012 and 2013 and appropriation. That's huh? Okay. And then on line 16 of page 2 of the ordinance, now therefore the Anchorage Assembly ordains. And on line 29, It has an AO number for 2012. And then on the third page, on line 12, that this ordinance is effective upon passage and approval.
And I've got a mover.
Do we have thirds on all of these?
Yes.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
There was one other on line 5, page 3. AR 2012-116 was deleted and substituted with AO 2012-blank.
Oh, yes, sorry. Line 6 on page 3. An AR 2012-116 is substituted with an AO for 2012.
Okay. So, yeah. Thank you. Mr. Trainee.
Julia, are you in concurrence with this?
Through the chair, yes, Mr. Trainee, I am.
Madam Clerk, do you have everything in writing that you need for this? I worry when we start doing things without it being in writing.
I have it in writing, but the superintendent came up at the break and said that this is the same format they've used for 30 years.
Julia, if we've used it for 30 years, what's the problem at this time of the night?
I can't address the 30-year problem of it going before this assembly. I haven't seen that. If it's gone in front of the assembly for 30 years and it hasn't been caught, then I don't think that that makes it right. Mr. Starr brought up a question. I did the best research I could in the amount of time. But on our break, there are 3 of us who agree. Okay. The other
that's an occurrence, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a concurrence. But what I would suggest to the body is this: that there is no harm in changing it to an ordinance. And there is a significant risk that if the resolution by order of the charter and the code cannot amend an ordinance, then we would be putting the school district behind. If instead we simply make these changes and call this an ordinance, anything that can be done by resolution can also be done by ordinance. And so that way you've not lost your public hearing date, you've changed nothing but the reference in the title and in the sections that reference an AO, and you're just going to have it be introduced as an ordinance, and that's the best way that we could figure to save everything that needed to be saved in this without changing the public hearing date. But the risk is up to the assembly.
Julia, could we let this AR still go forward and have the AO also? Is there a problem with having both vehicles in case going the AO route is wrong and we have to use the AR? Is there a problem not getting rid of the AR and using both the AR and the AO? And at that time we have the hearing, gives us more time to figure out which one we want to use. Julia, is that a problem?
That wouldn't be our recommendation.
Is it a problem, ma'am?
I don't know. You can wait and I can research that, Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Ms. Drummond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the school board's memorandum number 289, the Exhibit 1 at the back of this document, and if the internet access wasn't so slow, I could look at previous school board memos, but Ms. Osiander and I approved many years of these financial plans. We're all of a sudden changing what the school board approved at their meeting of June 11th, and that could create a problem. I sort of am comfortable with Mr. Trainee's suggestion that we move both documents forward, since there's nobody here from the school district that can tell us if we are now substantially changing what it is that the school board approved on June 11th, and therefore putting the whole process at risk, especially since they said they had a time limitation on implementation upon our approval of this in July. I think it would be safe to submit both items and then treat one as a substitute version at the time, and we have 3 weeks to figure out which is the correct path. And I do appreciate the amended version in abeyance, just in case we need it. Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
There is significant difference in this approval action. Even we talked about it at the work session on Friday. This is a direct appropriation from Juneau to the school district. In years past, the difference has been the nuance that they appropriated money to us first, and then we transferred it over. And I believe if you go back and do your research, this is the first time we're doing it this way. And it's you know, I understand, Ms. Drummond, in theory, you've seen it time and time again, but the added appropriation, the lack of PM&E oversight to some of these projects is what's new and different. That's some of what I'm doing here as well, but I also want to make sure that if we can talk about the appropriation in a manner that's, quite frankly, I hate to use the pun, but appropriate. Whereas statements currently as submitted talk about the appropriation. We appropriate the money, in this case quite a bit of it. So it's more of a note of caution and procedural correctness than it is trying to delay or do anything out of the ordinary. That's not what I'm trying to do here at all. But I think that you're going to find, if you do your research, this is the first time we've taken money from Juneau this way and pushed it through to a budget revision. And I'm just want to make sure we do that part of it correct. There's also no clarity to me where the rest of the money is hanging out there for that tax authority that we've got hanging out there. Is that another action, or can we combine it with this one? And I guess if I see an ordinance title, that one trumps a resolution for that action by amendment the night of our public hearing if we choose to do that. So it's all above board. I think it's just good government to move it to an ordinance, and I appreciate Ms. Tucker and the legal team there at least coming together on the answer. Thank you.
Ms. Osiander.
I did talk to the superintendent briefly after we broke here, and she said just ordinance or resolution, just go ahead. But I would remind the body that 3 members can introduce, and it's introduced. So if you want to introduce something else, head on, you just need 3 people, and we could deal with it later. I think that's more productive than debating now, since it's Mr. Starr's action is done.
Ms. Tucker.
Thank you. Through the chair, I wanted to make a clarification in adding on to Ms. Drummond's comment. None of the changes that the Department of Law and I suggest were to the substance of what was passed by the school board, and none of the documentation actually says that the school board passed this form in that way. None of the numbers have been changed. It's only the title and doing it by ordinance.
So,
Mr. Trini.
Mr. Chairman, it just takes 3 to introduce. And I have no problem with going the AO route, but I just want to keep the AR in case we have to go that way. We're talking about 3 introduce. You've got 3 introduce. Let's go with both vehicles. We can drop the other one off if we need to, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Trini, if that's the desire, let's take action on this one, and then you can reintroduce the AR.
this is already done.
The AO is already introduced.
Okay.
If someone wants to introduce the AR, they can do that now.
Okay. We need an introduction of the AR then. No.
No, we don't.
It's introduced by 3.
Right.
Move to introduce the
Second.
AR.
Third.
Okay, so we got a first, second, and a third to introduce the AR as well. So we got the AR and the AO. Anyone object to that?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Just safeguard if we need it.
Okay, we need to get the first, second, and third on the AR.
I'm second. She's
Harriet was
I'm
first.
second. He's
Trainee,
third.
Honeman.
Okay.
No, we don't.
Okay, Ms. Gree-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's just move on. I'm glad that both documents are introduced. I appreciate the work that the 3 attorneys have done, but I think the resolution is fine, so I'm glad to see that both are introduced, and let's just move on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr.
Mr. Chairman, can you suggest to the school district leadership that they submit some of these items to the legal review of somebody, perhaps ours, if we need to have them that way. It would help to have somebody have legal oversight to it. There doesn't seem to be anybody at the school district to call when you have questions like this. So that's my request to you, if you can
Okay, I'll be sure and do that.
And then if you can take up the task of perhaps having clarity on the AO versus the AR before the 10th, so the public's not confused. Thank you.
We'll take care of that. Okay, we're at, we have no special orders, public testimony. Anyone? Seeing, hearing none,
Second.
we are adjourned. Thank you.